Hello, and welcome to another episode of Untraditionally Traditional, a podcast with me, Brittany Duncan, a Millennial Homemaker. Join me each week as I share all the things I've learned that make keeping your home, garden, and life running smoothly, all while working. If you are enjoying the podcast, please be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcasting app so you get the episodes downloaded straight to you every Monday. Now, on to today's episode. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Untraditionally Traditional, a Millennial Homemaker. This is your host, Brittany Duncan, and today I have another interview episode for you to enjoy. I am joined by Lauren Jacobs, also known as the Cheerful Baker. Lauren is a fellow homemaker and podcaster, a passionate baker, entrepreneur, and content creator who inspires others to find joy in the art of baking. Through her tutorials, tips, and recipes, she encourages bakers of all skill levels to embrace their creativity in the kitchen, whether it's crafting intricate sugar cookies, perfecting cake designs, or experimenting with new flavors. Lauren's approach is always cheerful and approachable, and today we're going to tackle the topic of turning a hobby into a business as a homemaker in what I hope is the same manner, approachable. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thank you for having me.
So I would love if you would share with the listeners a little bit about your business from a bird's eye view. I'm sure it feels like a journey and it's hard to sum up, but let's talk about how long you've been operating the Cheerful Baker and how you got your start. What made you get into it?
Sure. So I love baking. I love cooking. And I grew up sitting on the counter with my mom, making chocolate chip cookies and brownies and all those fun things.
Mhm.
And I'm very, very creative. And when my kids were little, when my oldest son was born, I actually quit my full-time job to stay home. But I wasn't happy to stay home. I wanted to make a little bit of income as well. So I went to work at a school as the art teacher.
Mhm.
And in doing that, I rediscovered my love of painting and I started painting and started looking at Instagram. And I saw a friend of mine had posted these beautiful cookies. And that's something that I had always wanted to learn how to do. So I called her and I said, "How did you learn how to do this?" And she said that she had taken some online classes. And she said, "Lauren, you ought to do it. It's just like painting. You're already doing that, but you can eat the paint, because the icing." And I thought, well, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's really just what it started out as, Brittany. I thought it would be something fun that I would enjoy. And I loved it. I mean, it sort of checked all the boxes. It let me do what I loved, which was bake and be in the kitchen. And then I got to use my creativity, and it just made people happy when I would give them cookies. And so, of course, I loved that. And I just started baking for fun. And then someone approached me and said, "Would you make cookies for my mother's birthday? And I'll pay you for them." And I thought, okay, that sounds good. So I started doing that, making cookies and making a little bit of money. And then I started making cookie cutters because my husband's very techie and he wanted to get a 3D printer. It was when 3D printers were first coming out.
Uh-huh.
So I learned how to make cookie cutters. And then I have a real desire to help others learn how to decorate cookies. So I took all of those skills and decided to start a subscription box, which helps anyone who wants to learn how to decorate cookies. It helps. I can make that happen. And I was approached by the Food Network several years ago to be on the Christmas Cookie Challenge.
Yeah.
So it was great because that gave me sort of the national stage with my 15 minutes of fame. And so what started out just as a little fun thing to do has turned into pay for my kids to go to college. So it's been a real blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's several things that you just said that, I want to kind of highlight for the listeners. And one is that you took a class to learn a skill. And then
Right.
two, that once you had learned that skill and learned that it could be revenue generating, that you didn't just hold it close to your chest. You basically have shared that knowledge and have made it something that other people can opt into as well, which is really cool. And I think something that runs in the homemaker community a lot is that we often feel like, yeah, life is hard. There's hard things that you have to do. I have learned this thing. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Here's what I have found to be the best way to do it. And so I love that you
Yes.
not only, learn this skill from a class that you took, but that you are not just making beautiful cookies to sell, that you have made it, you can learn to do this too, and that that's a whole avenue of your business.
Right, that's right. And I just want to touch on something you just said because I should have mentioned this when you talked about how you said something about life is hard. My oldest son has severe dyslexia. Now he's 22, he's doing great, he's in college, but when he
Hmm.
was young, it was very difficult. It was very difficult on him. It was very difficult on me, and my husband because we just didn't know how to help him. And we did everything we knew how to do, but it was a very, very sad time. And it was during this time that I really got into cookie decorating because I needed something. I needed something positive and happy to think about because it was a really, really, really tough time. So that's not why I started, but I think that's why I stuck with it,
Hmm.
because it just gave me this outlet that I so desperately needed at the time.
Yeah, and that's, something else I wanted to talk about today too, is that people who look at your story from a bird's eye view might view it as a overnight success from a business standpoint. You started baking these beautiful cookies that I can personally attest are delicious, for fun to try a new hobby, and then you had the Food Network show, and then that you seems like you like blew up on social media. And anyone that's done anything difficult knows that it can seem a lot easier from the sidelines. People are like, oh wow, like you got super lucky, when in reality it was a lot of hard work. And it sounds like you had, family matters going on too, which is a whole another part that is, adjacent to the business, let alone the typical business challenges that somebody goes through when starting a business. So what are some of the hard parts that you had to persevere through?
One of the hardest things for me is I'm your typical artistic brain.
Hmm.
I am not very organized. So my kids were pretty young when I started decorating cookies, and I really had to learn to organize my time
Yeah.
because my family has always been my first priority. But I loved decorating cookies and I love cooking and I wanted to have a clean house and I wanted to do all the things, right? And I realized that I was going to have to be a lot more organized, and ask for help, or I was going to completely burn myself out.
Hmm.
So for me, once I found this website and I can't even remember what it is right now. It was Fly Lady. It was called flylady.com. And I'm not even sure if it's around anymore, but it broke down your house cleaning chores day by day. So it would say, do this on Monday, do this on Tuesday. And so I followed that to a T because that's not how my mind thinks. And I
Hmm.
needed somebody to help me with that.
Yeah.
And then I sort of did the same thing with my cookie business. I decided, okay, I'm going to make cookie dough once a month. I'm going to freeze it so that it's ready. And then I did a very organized plan of knowing, okay, this is how many orders I can take per week. And if I have an order due on Saturday, which that's always when they're due, this is what I do Monday, this is what I do Tuesday. And but that was hard for me because I wanted to try and get everything done myself without a plan. Because
Hmm.
that's how, I typically just go by the seat of my pants and I really couldn't do that if I wanted this business to be successful and I wanted to have a smooth running home.
Yeah, in the process. And I think that's something, I mean, both in homemaking, but also in business, that people kind of lose sight of, that figuring out that process is a process of trial and error. Like I
Right.
imagine there was a series of times where it's like you'd get an order and you'd accept it, but then it's not in your rhythm, and it takes a minute to figure out that and the courage and willingness to realize that, you say, no, these are when I take orders, these are when they're due, so that you can keep, your like the train on the tracks basically,
Yes.
and factoring in your time too. I'm curious if that was something that you did at the beginning, kind of the value of your time, or if that came later, because it sounds like you're really passionate about it and it was an emotional outlet and something that you really enjoyed. And I think
Yes.
it's tough when you start a side business and you really love the thing that you're doing. It can become really easy not to put a value to your time.
That it's so funny that you mentioned that because that's one thing that we more experienced cookie decorators try and tell newer cookie decorators, charge your worth, charge your worth.
Mhm.
And it's hard to do that when you very first started. And for me, I knew what I wanted to charge per dozen cookie based on my experience. And I did not really take into account the time, honestly, because I was new and it was taking me a ton of time. And I
Sure.
was getting so much out of the experience of sitting and decorating the cookies that had nothing to do with the profit that I was making, that I didn't worry about that. I enjoyed it. It was my hobby, but it was also my mental health time because I would listen to music and think, and I just enjoyed it so much. But that is something that you really do need to think about when you have a side hustle that turns into a business, is to make sure that you are charging for the time, because cookie decorating for me now is not as time consuming because I have years, almost a decade of experience. When you first start cookie decorating, it's going to take you more time. And I think that's true of any hobby. So I think it takes a little bit of time until you feel like you are making enough money for the time that it's taking you to do the skill. But that's just part of it. And as long as you're enjoying it, I think that that's fine.
Good friend of mine who owns her own business. She has a lavender and beef farm near us, but she said the same to me one time, and I say it on the podcast all the time because it really sticks with me. Is she always says that, through the work that they're doing on the farm, that she's paying for her education, and so when things go wrong, or it takes her 3 times as long as it should to figure out something, she always views it as she's paying for her education, which I think is a really good way to look at it. That yeah,
Yes.
as you're
I've never
yeah.
heard anyone say it that way, but that is exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's like anything in life, and especially with the internet, I love it. It's such a great tool. But if you look at, how to create a business plan or set up a business, there's a million different people. Like some people are going to tell you, like right off the bat, you need to be charging a premium for your time, and this is the breakdown. But then there is that other view of, well, I'm learning this, I got to get started, and
Right.
kind of factoring that side of things into as well.
Right. Right.
So there's a lot of the parts of a business that are not as glamorous, especially for those of us that are a creative brain. And I have, kind of gone in and out and had some side businesses here and there. And the part that is always different from the talent is that you've got to factor in accounting and business management and marketing and inventory and all of those things that are hard to learn, and maybe not as fun for you to execute if you are a creative brain and you enjoy the creative process. I'm curious what learning those skills and what that process has looked like for you in the business development.
It's looked like getting lots of help.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really fortunate that my husband is is my number one supporter, and we are very different. You know, he has a very analytical brain. He has a double major in college in accounting and computer science. So I'm very fortunate that he helps me with a lot of those things that I don't like to do.
Yeah.
One of the first things that I did was hire an accountant because I don't want to do that. I'm not good at that, and this business would not have lasted. I
Hmm.
also got a business coach from the very beginning, and that was hugely helpful. And it was someone who was successful. I mean, I've had a couple of business coaches along the way, and they always are people who specialize in things that I am no good at. And I think being a lifelong learner, especially when you're a business owner, is very, very important. So I sat down and I thought, okay, I need to do marketing. Well, I can do that. I love doing that. That's fun. That's creative. Well, I need to do the advertising too. And so I've hired someone to do that for me. And it was very hard to do that because I wasn't making a lot of money. But
Hmm.
I knew that if I didn't do that, no one was going to be able to see what I was doing. And in the business groups that I was in, I would constantly take classes about how to set up websites and about all the things that you just said that are not the fun things. And I slogged through that for years until I had enough, a big enough business to be able to offload those things onto someone else, which has really been a lifesaver. But it's hard. I mean, it's hard being a small business owner because you wear every single hat. But it's also kind of fun because I've learned all kinds of things that I didn't know that I would learn how to do.
Yeah, it is really enjoyable. I have that same experience that it really is enjoyable to learn about those skills, and it can also be hard because once you learn how to manage the website or run the marketing, it can be hard to pass that torch, and no one's going to be
Right.
as passionate and invested as your business as you are. But it's also
Yes.
that a moment that you have to realize that like you can't do it all. And I think that that really gives businesses the longevity is when they can outsource and find an expert in a particular arena to pass that torch out so that A, you don't get burnt out, but that B, your business isn't your everything, that your family and your time and whatever you do outside of your business, you still have time to do, and that your whole life isn't your business either.
Yes. One of the best things that I did years ago, I hired my son, who was probably 15 at the time, and his friends to pack my boxes. And I remember, I mean, it was so funny. I went and I'm showing him exactly how to do it. This is exactly how you put the cookie cutters in. This is exactly, and it took me a couple months of doing that. And I thought, Lauren, you're being ridiculous, but it was my baby.
Yeah.
I thought, you put the cookie cutters in a box, you make it look nice, you put the other things in it, you close the box, you tape it, and you mail it off. And it was fine. And once I realized that it didn't have to be perfect, perfect, that if they left something out, no one was going to care. We were going to mail it to them and it was going to be fine. It gave me the freedom to do other things. And it gave my son and his friends the great experience of working and learning a little bit about entrepreneurship. So
Yeah.
that is hard to do at the beginning, but that was one of the best decisions I made. And then once I did that with them, I thought, okay, what else could I maybe find someone to do a little bit? I mean, I wasn't hiring full-time people. I was hiring somebody to do something a couple hours a month. So it wasn't a big expense, but it really did wonders for my mental health and my business.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like through the business aspect that you've really managed to keep passionate about baking and creating through all the steps and learning to outsource and keeping developing new projects and new cutters and doing everything that you're doing. I know a lot of times when people blend the line between their hobby or passion and turning it into a business, they can lose their passion. How have you
Mhm.
managed to keep it, and what's that process look like for you?
Well, there's two ways. One is I have a very strong why. I have two sons who are in college, and I really wanted to be able to pay their tuition. And so, on the days that I don't feel like working,
Hmm.
and you kind of work, I feel like I work all the time because I work from home. I think
Yeah.
about how incredible it will be for them to come out of college and not have any debt. So that is a huge that helps me to continue to have passion because I love my kids so much. And then, secondly, I'm so focused on helping others do what I do because I see all the incredible benefits that it's had in my life. I mean, not only financially, being able to help with the bills, the college tuition, the fun things, the vacations, but also just be able to get through the difficult things with being able to focus on a business that's fun. Like I said, my son having dyslexia and how difficult that is.
Hmm.
So for me, this has been a really life-changing experience, and I want to help others find that same joy. And I think when you're focused more on others than yourself, it's easier to continue to have passion in what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's such a big thing. And that I've never had a business coach, but I've heard from those that work with business coaches is like one of the first things that you really do is develop like your why or your mission statement and getting that clear picture of what that looks like and then really sticking to it. It becomes your guiding light. And I think I actually just released a podcast episode that was kind of similar to that, talking about in the home and that it can become really easy to forget why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. Like it's not about clean floors and a stocked fridge. It's about your family having a comfortable place to live and have, food and feeling
Yes.
happy. And it's the why. And so keeping that as your focus. Yeah, of course it works in the home. Why wouldn't it work in business?
Yes, right.
If you could go back to the beginning and tell yourself, a piece of advice, or is there anything that you think that you would do differently from the beginning?
I think from the beginning, I would ask for help. I would ask for help earlier because I'm a very go-getter person. I never sit still
Hmm.
and I'm independent and I want to do everything myself. And so I really I made it hard on myself at the very beginning because I just thought I could do it all. And so going back, I think I would just ask for help. After I had been going a little bit, um, probably making cookies a couple years, I reached out to a friend of mine that I knew cleaned houses, and I had her come one time before a big event that I was having at my house. And it was incredible. I thought, why didn't I do that earlier? And then I realized, okay, I could decorate a couple dozen cookies and it would pay for her to come. Well, I would rather decorate cookies than clean my house, quite honestly.
Sure.
So just finding little ways to where I didn't work myself to death earlier, I would definitely do that. Like asking my son and his friends to pack the boxes, just little things like that. I wish I would have done a couple years earlier than I
Hmm.
actually did them.
Yeah, as you can probably already tell, like I'm a sucker for quotes and little sayings, but another one of my favorites is just because you can doesn't mean you have to. And I try to remind myself that because it's so easy. If you are a doer and you don't sit still and independent, it can be really easy to be like, oh, I can do it, or, I can knock that out, or I can handle it. I know how to do it. But just because you can doesn't mean you have to. Like, of course, you know how to clean
Right.
your home, but yeah, again, it goes back to that time value. And I love that. Like, what would you rather be doing? Like, when you look at the value of your time in your business as opposed to what it would pay to do for someone to come clean and their best skill, it makes sense and it helps them, it helps another entrepreneur. And yeah, I love
Yes.
that. How about the future for the Cheerful Baker? What's on the horizon or goal list?
Well, Brittany, I feel like this conversation that we had before the podcast was very timely because I started a podcast a couple years ago called Sugar Coated Dreams. And I had to step away from it because honestly, I just did not have enough time in the day to get done what I needed to get done. And so that's the thing that kind of dropped off. But I miss it. And so I want to do it again. And so I think that my goal for next year is going to be to start the podcast up again because, like we were talking about earlier, um, one of my whys is in helping other people realize that they can do what I do because I'm nothing special. I'm a mom who wanted to stay home with her kids and then got a little part-time job, started making cookies in her kitchen and ended up on the Food Network. And sure, some of that was luck, probably, but a lot of it was hard work. And I feel like that dream is available to anyone. And I love to tell stories of other entrepreneurs and the things that they did so that someone out there listening might think their story sounds kind of like me. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
could do something like that. So I'm going to start. And because I'm telling you now, I actually have to make it happen.
Yes, I
So
love
I'm
that.
going to start my podcast back up in 2025.
I can't wait that. And listeners, it is out there. The episodes that Lauren has put out, they're out there. So if you want to get a jump start and listen to the backlog of episodes, that's something I love about podcasting is that the content is evergreen and a lot of the messages they're timeless. So go back, listen to the backlog of episodes, and then there'll be episodes soon. I'm gonna say it for you. and
Sounds
you
good.
and you can catch up. But listeners, I hope that you've enjoyed hearing about Lauren's journey of starting and running the Cheerful Baker and that you've taken away a thought or two to store away as you consider your own hobbies and passion projects and entertain the idea of turning them into a business. Lauren, if you will, I'd love if you would tell the listeners the best place for them to find your classes, cutters, cookies, the podcast, anything else that you're up to.
Sure. You can go to cheerfulbaker.com and there you can find my classes, my cutters, my subscription box, which is the Cheerful box. Everything you could ever want to know about cookies is there. Blog posts, all kinds of fun things. You can go to Instagram, which is the Cheerful Baker, or Facebook, which is Cheerful Baker. So let's all go out and make the world a better place through cookies.
Yes, 100%. Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Lauren. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Untraditionally Traditional. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with those special people who would love it too, and write a review. For more tips and photos of my home and garden, follow Untraditionally Traditional Pod on Instagram. Until next week, let's continue to make our homes places of joy and service to ourselves and those we share them with.